Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of RichardMetalFan Interviews. This is episode number 55, and today's guest, we're talking to Karl Sanders, best known as the guitarist and vocalist for death metal band Nile. We're going to be talking to him about him getting into metal, what made him want to start playing guitar, doing a rundown of the Nile discography, and a plethora of other topics. So, without further ado, let's go talk to Karl. So what's up, guys? I am here with the one and only Karl Sanders from Nile. How are you doing today, Karl?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. It's a good, lovely afternoon here in Georgia, where I'm at. So
nice. Where in Georgia?
In Kennesaw, which is like 35 minutes north of Atlanta.
Okay. All right. So do I pass it as I'm going to Atlanta?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's like literally north, and you just go down and you're there.
Okay. All right.
That's
cool.
awesome.
All right. Next time I'm going to Atlanta, I'll be looking for the Kennesaw exit.
Awesome. So basically this format is I want to talk about like your musical journey from where you started to now and just do a rundown of all the Nile albums. But before we go into that, let's just dive right back into the very beginning. So what were the first bands that got you into metal, and what made you want to start playing guitar?
Ooh. Well, when I started playing guitar, there really wasn't any metal. I was 9 years old, and it was, that would have been what year? I was born in 63, 3 and 9. That would have been 1972. So I didn't know anything about any metal. But there was a guitar class in my school. So I was like, well, fuck, I got to take a guitar class. You know. And I was terrible. Really, really bad. But that didn't stop me. And then as like I got a little bit older, like, mid-teens or, whatever, that's when I started hearing actual metal things. But it still wasn't metal. At that time we had Sabbath, Zeppelin, Rush, shit like that. It wasn't until later in high school that I heard like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Okay, and that shit was starting to get, this is what the fuck I want to do. And I remember going to see the Heaven and Hell tour, which would have been a junior in high school. With it was Ronnie James Dio doing Heaven and Hell with Black Sabbath, that album.
Yeah, classic album.
And I remember being in the audience and sitting there watching and going, that's what I want to do. I think I could do that. Which was an incredibly naive and foolish thing to think as a teenager, that shit was ever going to be easy. Yeah,
awesome. And do you remember like the first guitar you bought and like the first song you tried to play?
First guitar that I bought, or
Yeah,
first guitar like my parents bought me?
I mean, it doesn't matter either way.
That's the difference. Yeah. I remember like the first one I bought, like with the money I made mowing lawns, and that was a very shitty Les Paul copy made by a company called Encore, Encore. And it was an awful guitar, but I immediately put a DiMarzio pickup in it. The DiMarzio Super Distortion. And all of a sudden, that guitar screamed. It was still an awful guitar, but, with a DiMarzio pickup in it. Now we can do something.
Wow. And so were you in any bands like starting up before you started Nile, or was Nile like your first band?
No, there was a decade of bands before Nile. Most of them not worth even discussing. But I did play in a band with the original Nile drummer. 10 years before that, we played in a band called Mariah, which was like a local, started as a cover band. And back in those days, in the 80s, there were so many fucking places to play that even in our shitty little area here in South Carolina, there were enough venues to where even a cover band could play 4 nights a week and just move around in a little circuit of about 6 weeks to 2 months and play in, all around the area and have enough work to always be playing. So, yeah, that's what we did. And then later on, we started writing our own shit. But yeah, at first we were just playing Judas Priest, Metallica, uh, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Rush. Same shit any metal cover band of that era would have been doing. So, yeah, we did it too.
Awesome. And tell me about like those first Nile demos, because I know you did like the self-titled demo in '94, and then you also did the Festivals of Atonement and Rammus Bring of the Wars. Like, was that like stuff to like get like, of course, your first label with Relapse's attention?
No. Well, the first self-titled demo was really done, while we were still trying to figure out who the fuck we were. What the fuck do we want to do? So it was kind of wandering around direction-wise. I don't think it was till Festivals of Atonement that we started figuring out who we were and what we could do and what our niche was. Why listen to this band? Yeah.
All right. And then, of course, you got signed to Relapse. How did they find you guys?
Actually, they didn't. We signed with Craig Rowe's label Visceral. He played in a band called Hemdale. He's an Ohio guy. He had a little metal label, and he was doing quite well. So we signed with him, and he put out our demo. He re-released Ramses Bring of War on CD, and we went in and we recorded Amongst Catacombs of Nephron-Ka.
Great album right here.
That one, which was our first record, and we were thrilled to death. We didn't have much of a budget at all, but we didn't care. We were fucking happy. This was our chance to bring what we do and bring it to people. But Craig decided that he wanted to go back to college and, finish his studies. So he was going to put this record label business on hold. So he sold the project and a bunch of other shit to Matt Jacobson of Relapse. Yeah, and then we got put on the shelf for 6 months because it really wasn't that high on Relapse's priority list. And that was a tough 6 months. We'd already made our record, and now we got sold to somebody else who, really wasn't all that interesting, and, they had other shit they wanted to do.
Oh, wow. I never knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so that was like the hardest 6 months of my life ever. When it finally came out, we were overjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's still, in my opinion, one of the best metal debuts of all time. I could put up there with like Dawn of Possession, Eaten Back to Life, and shit like that.
Well, I think Dawn of Possession is one hell of a motherfucking record. I still put it on. So, yeah, fucking Annihilation.
Yeah, I actually interviewed Ross about a couple months ago.
Isn't he a great guy?
Yeah, like I always say, death metal is like evil music for nice people.
I know, it's crazy how that works.
Yeah, I know, right?
Maybe we get all our violence and frustrations and stress. It comes out when we play our music. So that's how come we can be chill.
Awesome. And then moving on to 2000 with the release of Black Seeds of Vengeance. Now, usually with the debut album, you have pretty much like your whole life to write it, and there's like a lot of hype behind it. But when it comes to this, did you felt like pressure to follow up Amongst the Catacombs of Nephron-Ka?
it wasn't a pressure to follow up so much as we recognized we had an opportunity um, to make another record and really be heard. But the pressure came because our drummer Pete was hurt. He had torn his rotator cuff in his left shoulder um, while we were touring. So that made this record like really tough to make. We were, he was playing in pain. And we couldn't keep his tracks. So we had to call our friend Derek Roddy, who we knew because he's from South Carolina. So we went way back. He had a band called the Deboning Method, which is a badass thrash metal band. These guys were crazy sick. So we know Derek. So we called Derek, and he came and gave us a hand.
No. Oh, that's awesome. And then the next album is In Their Dark Enshrined. I love this album, and of course this year is also the 20-year anniversary of this album. So do you have like a different perspective about In Their Dark Enshrined now as opposed to when you first put it out 20 years ago?
I still think the same thing about it. I think it represents the culmination or pinnacle of that early period of Nile, where like we had definite ideas about what we were trying to achieve, what mark we wanted to make on the world, to say this is what we do. Here it is. This is what we can do. Right. So when I listen to it now, I still hear that. But I also hear, we had a lot of fun writing those songs. A lot of fucking fun.
Yeah, and I pretty much also going with that because I pretty much know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyway. Is there a chance we can get a celebration of that album somehow?
Well, I think that's a pretty good idea. I don't know what we would do. Maybe re-release it on vinyl or something. That's probably
I'd buy it.
Yeah.
And then moving on to get to probably, in my opinion, one of the best death metal albums of the 21st century, Annihilation of the Wicked. Like this, in my opinion, is probably like my favorite Nile album. Like, tell me about like the whole writing and recording process of this.
That was we had just gotten George in the band.
Yeah. How did he join?
Well, that's a story. But basically it came down to like, we need a new drummer. Who the fuck are we possibly gonna get that can, live up to the drummers who came before? So Derek Roddy recommended George to us. And we watched some videos of George, and realized he was the fucking guy from watching, what he could do, his body posture, his technique, his musicality. We're like, if anybody's going to be able to do it, this guy, he's the guy. And it turned out he was a fucking superhuman being. And when I say superhuman being, I mean like, down to earth, ready to go to work, ready to do whatever the fuck it took. Which at that time, he was a struggling young musician, joining a band on the other side of the planet. So there's a whole bunch of challenges. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but there's a whole bunch of challenges in doing that. So George came and moved in with me for 2 months in my apartment. And we got to work. We were, me and George and, the rest of the band. We really fucking worked hard writing those songs. One of the things, though, that I think made a real difference with this Annihilation recording was Neil Kernan had to go home for some reason for 2 weeks when we finished the drums. So there was a 2-week gap between when we finished the drums and when we were going to start tracking guitars. So I said, what the fuck am I supposed to do for 2 goddamn weeks? Sit around fucking irritable and pissed off because we want to get started? So what I did, I went home and I had all the drum tracks. So I just recorded my parts just for fun because I had nothing else to do. So that album, all the guitar parts had actually been recorded already by the time that Neil came back and we went back in the studio in Columbia. I had just recorded all these guitar parts, the whole album, once already. And when you record all the guitars, there's a whole bunch of shit that you fucking learn in the process.
Wow.
Right? So just the fact that I'd already done it once, and now I was doing it second time, I really had a good grasp of, I know what I need to do now. I learned all that stuff, the 2 weeks I spent doing it at home. So I think that really made a difference in the cohesiveness of, how the songs really gel together. In death metal, the guitar parts and the drum parts, how well they work together really plays a big role in how well the song comes together.
Yeah, I agree. And like this album is so stick, like Cast Down the Heretic and Chapter of Obedience Before Giving Beneath to the Insert One in the Presence of the Crescent Shaped Horns. Like I know you guys love to have like long song titles. It's hard to even remember it.
The Chapter for Obeisance, that was the first song that George contributed to. It was kind of like his, okay, let's see what you got, right? And I remember that's what he brought, and the drum parts on there. If you're a drummer, that's some fucking really hard shit.
Yeah. Yeah, then moving on to Ithithalic. I probably butchered Ithithalic. Yeah. Yeah. Like, what was it like going from Annihilation to this?
What was it like? Well, that record was kind of like the band was in a state of expansion. Like, we'd done all the Annihilation touring and played all those Annihilation songs, and we were really on fire. Like, we could do anything we fucking want to, so we're going to. Fuck what anybody says. We're going to do what the fuck we want to. And really, it's encapsulated in the title. It's Ithithalic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do what the fuck we want to. I didn't even remember saying that in press interviews at the time. They were like, we don't understand what's going on with this record. And I'm like, well, we're going to do what the fuck we want to do, and it doesn't fucking matter what the fuck you say anyway. Fuck you, this is death metal.
Yeah. Yeah, just like kind of be rebellious, like do whatever the fuck you want.
Which in hindsight, there's a lot of production issues, which I still haven't forgiven people for on that record. And I don't know that I ever will.
Yeah.
But as far as the writing of it itself, I remember George came over twice for like 8 weeks at a time to work on these songs. So we really, 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 really worked on these fucking songs like motherfuckers. There's some playing on there that when I put it on today, I'm still like, whoa, we did that? Holy shit.
Yeah. And then moving on to Those Whom the Gods Detest. Like, I like this album. In my opinion, I think it's a pretty underrated album. Like, tell me about that.
Well, this one we were like, going to give our guy that was producing us, a chance to make up for Ithithalic. And there was a real mindset, okay, we're going to get this motherfucking thing right. And I remember George came over He was here for a good 2 months for rehearsals for that record. He was here so long that he actually bought a car so he could go back and forth from my house to the rehearsal room every day, and he would get there early. He would go early in the day, like noon, and play all day, and then the rest of the band would come in that evening, right? And that's how we were doing things. George was out there playing his ass off every day so hard that he tore something in his leg. So,
Shit.
yeah, George had a terrible injury where he could barely walk. When we started that record, we were like, how the fuck are we going to pull this shit off with a drummer who's playing in this much pain? And to George's credit, he fucking did it. It even got funny to where sometimes George would come in from the drum room to the control room and say, I can't do this. It's impossible. It's impossible. But we will do it. And he'd go right back in and do whatever fucking thing he had to do in pain and fucking nailed it.
Oh.
You know, back in those days, you know, when you made a metal record, there wasn't as much forgivable leeway because the performances are like real, absolute fucking unedited performances. Back then, in those days, you had to get it pretty fucking right or just do it again.
Right. Can't bullshit it.
Exactly. No bullshitting allowed. Like Christian would say, no bullshit.
Yeah.
No bullshit. So yeah, to George's credit, you know, he fucking slayed it on that record under very personally challenging conditions.
Yeah. And then moving on to At the Gates of Zethu. Interesting album. Tell me about that.
Well, this one, I think there were a lot of hard lessons learned making Gates of Zethu. Some choices that were made, things that were allowed to happen that should not have been.
Yeah.
And I think it really cheated the record out of its greater potential, just because of some of the choices that were made, the way things were done, the way it was mixed.
Yeah.
I'm still angry about it, right?
Yeah.
If you like, if I had to stand before God on Judgment Day and go, do you have any regrets? That would be one of them. Ethiophalic, the sound on Ethiophalic, production on Gates of Zethu. Very painful moments to reckon with. But there's some amazing guitar playing and drumming on Gates of Zethu. Oh, dude. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I know this year is also the 10-year anniversary of Gates of Zethu. Is there like a chance we get like a remix or a remastered version of it?
I'd love to remix that fucking record. Nothing would make me happier than to give fans a version of those songs like they were meant to be.
Yeah. And then moving on to what should not be unearthed. I think that this is like a great redemption. Shouldn't you feel like you wanted to try to like we need to get our shit together with this one? And it definitely shows it on here.
That's exactly what we were thinking. It's that's exactly what was going on with that. It's like, let's get back to what we're supposed to be doing. And still there's a few things about that record that I'm still angry about. I think the drums should have been louder. There was dissent within the band. But there's some killer shit on that fucking record.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I remember this album was actually the first time I actually saw you guys on this album cycle. I saw you did like that headliner in January of 2016 at the Old Masquerade, right? And then that same year you played Summer Slaughter in Atlanta, and that was great. And you actually that was the last day of the show was in Atlanta. And I've pretty much seen every Nile show in Atlanta since then. And I think it's been like 6 times I've seen you guys now.
Oh, nice. Well, you're part of the family now. If you
Yeah.
do it that many times. We were in Worcester, Massachusetts, and there was a guy in the front row, and it was his 13th Nile show.
Holy shit.
All right? 13th.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then your most latest album, Vile Melodic Rites, that's like a tongue twister in itself. Like tell me about that. I know it's the first album with Brad and Brian in the band, and obviously Brad played with you all for a while. But how did you hook up with Brian?
Brian was a suggestion from Brad.
Oh wow!
And he was the right guy. He absolutely was the right person. It was a brilliant call by Brad. Let's give this guy a chance. And we were very happy with what we heard when he did his audition. We're like, yeah, this guy, this is the guy. And it turned out Brian was great to work with. Brilliant guitarist, writes amazing stuff, is easy to work with. He's got his motherfucking feet on the ground. Dude, come on, man. It's a good combination. Like, you can't always have all three.
True.
Right? You might have a guy who can play great guitar, but his vocals kind of suck. Or maybe his guitar playing and his vocals are great, but his writing is kind of wacky. Or maybe if he's got all three of those things, he's a fucking lunatic.
Yeah.
But to get all those things in one human being, that's pretty fucking rare.
Awesome. And since it's been 3 years since Vile Melodic Rites, have you all started working on the next Nile album?
We sure have. I've written 3. George wrote 2, and Brian wrote 2 so far. And there's 5 more that we got to finish. So there we go.
Awesome. With this new album, will you just pick up after Vile Melodic Rites, or do you think this record will kind of like stand out more in the Nile catalog?
Well, I think this record's going to naturally have its own character. So the world has been through quite a lot in the last couple of years.
Right.
I don't think anybody's the same as they were, a few years ago.
Yeah. That's another story for another time.
For sure. So, there's probably, this one's going to have its own character. I think each of the records in Nile have done its own, flavor, its own, identity within the, thing that Nile does. Each one, it's got its own thing.
Awesome.
And I can tell this one will as well.
Awesome. And kind of like talking about like the songwriting, because I know you do a lot of vocals. So do you need to like hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or do you usually have like a lyrical concept in mind and that can help determine the composition of the music itself?
I fucking write the words first. For me, I find it gives me a roadmap. Like, that way I know what I'm doing. Right? When I've done it the other way, which like would be the normal way, a bunch of guys go in a band room, they come up with some riffs, and they put it together, and they got this fucking thing, and okay, now what do? We got to put some vocals to this fucking thing. What do we do? And there's a whole fucking thing attached to that. Like, how do you know you're writing the right words for this fucking piece of music? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But when I write the words first, it gives me a roadmap. It's like You know, when they're gonna make a fucking action movie, and they make storyboards first, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what the words are. The words are the storyboard, so that as I'm writing the riffs and figuring out what goes where, I have something to kind of show me which way to go.
Right.
It
Right.
works for
Have you ever had like a situation where you had like the best set of lyrics and they go like one syllable like over the arrangement?
Oh man, all the time. Yeah, like it's a thing. Like we always have them on sheets, right? And as we're going through the song, there's pencil marks where you got to figure out which syllable you got to cut out, or which word you got to chop, or find a synonym.
Yeah.
We got to get the right number of syllables.
Right. And I know it's also with the lyrics, you always talk like about the Egyptian kind of theme. So is there also like a lot of like research that goes hand in hand when coming up with the lyrics too?
Yeah, for sure. Um, but that's to me, that's not a problem because it's something I enjoy anyway. Um, I'm really a fan of world history, so for me, it's fun.
Right. And also with your guitar playing, because I notice in Niall's music, it's also very rhythmic driven, but also very melodic as well. So does like the rhythm come first and then you like add write the melody over that? Like how does that come first when like laying down the groundwork of a song?
Well, I've come to the belief that any of the elements can come in any order. Um, it's more creatively liberating to not dictate the order of inspired creativity. Like if you have an idea, then okay, you should allow it to grow in whatever way it wants to grow, rather than dictating a formula onto it. So if I got the chord first, okay, now I got chords. Now I got something to build on. If I needed to put a melody to that, I have something to connect all that fucking stuff.
Right.
So, or maybe I got the melody first. Or whatever.
Right.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. If the male gods gift you a cool idea, should you really be saying, you know what, fuck you, that didn't come in the right order, give me the other idea first?
That's great.
Unless you want the metal guys to start going, you know what, fuck you, I'm giving this great idea to somebody else.
That's good analogy. And also kind of like going into your live setting, because is there like a similar energy to playing live as to opposed to recording CD? Is there kind of similar, or they're almost kind of like two separate entities?
I think they're totally different entities. And I don't like to confuse the two. Like some people like to write when they're on tour, but I don't like to do it. It's totally different mindset to me.
Oh, so do you ever try to like execute the song live as on the CD, or do you try to like add like different like spins or twists to it?
No, we do it like the fucking record, and here's why. If you make a record and you ask people to listen to it, and they do listen to it, and maybe they listen to it twice, maybe if you're lucky, they even enjoy it. All right? And then you tell this same group of people that, okay, now buy a concert ticket to come hear us play these songs, but you don't play them those songs. Now you got people going, it didn't sound anything like the record. And, those people would have a very good reason to be upset because you're not giving them the thing that they came to love. So I think it's very important to play the songs like they are on the record and not change them up unless you want to start calling it jazz. Jazz audiences don't expect it to sound exactly like the record, but that's jazz music. If it's death metal, yeah, I can remember going, and seeing like Gene Hoglan play or whatever, and like I want to hear those Dark Angel drum fills like they are on Darkness Descends.
Great album, by the way.
Yeah, right. If he were to change all that up and decide, well, you know what, I'm gonna do a jazz improv thing here, we would all be like, "What are you doing? We've grown to love these fucking fills. Please do them, because we love them." Right. So I think it's the same thing. I don't change the guitar solos around, as much as I can help it, or change the vocals, or change the drum parts. No, it would be unkind to the audience, and I believe if you're unkind to the audience has every right to be unkind right back.
Right. And then one more final question I wanted to ask you is kind of like going back to the songwriting, because I always ask artists this. I would get like a very long answer. I just get like a short, straight to the point question. But how do you know when a song is done?
Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you gotta just trust your band members when they start yelling at you, "Stop fucking up the song. It's great. Leave it alone, you fucking lunatic." Well, that's a pretty strong indication. Yeah, you're fucking done.
Yeah, that's awesome. So before we go, I just want to thank you so much for this little interview. It's just anything else with Nile you'd like to promote in terms of like tours, new music and stuff?
Well, we got a tour coming up in Europe, November, with Christian. Fuck yeah.
Oh yeah. Need to get the boys on here.
Yeah, man, what a great group of guys. Go so far back. I got so many great Christian stories. Yeah. I love those guys.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to like the next Nile album and the tour and stuff. So everybody, Karl Sanders from Nile. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Richard.